Back here on Afternoon Drive with Matt Hatfield on Priority Auto Sports Radio 94.1. And we're pleased to be joined by one of the very best in the business. He is the college football guru himself. If you haven't gotten his magazine, and I got myself a copy right now, it's the book the experts can't do without. Phil Steele. It's the college football preview, and you can find it online at philsteele.com. It's available at Barnes & Noble in Chesapeake, where I got mine last week. And we say hello to the one and only Phil Steele. Phil, how you been, and how's the summer treating you?
Oh, Matt, I love the summer because there's no magazine deadline. We put 7 months of work into that thing, and then during football season, I usually work about 100 hours a week. So I'm enjoying my summer, just kick back and do a little bit of radio.
It's a guy that doesn't sleep until about July and August when he gets some pool time and does these interviews. Well, we'll get to the teams of note, especially here in the Commonwealth, Phil. But what impresses me most about your publication is while others out there are cutting down on the pages and stats while cranking up the price, yours just continues to get better and better. But with the constant player movement we've got in college football nowadays, and it's way different than 2-3 decades ago when you were putting together the magazine, tell the audience out there how much of an undertaking it is to get this done with the accuracy and precision necessary so that it's on the shelves by July.
Yeah, Matt, it used to be, I would say maybe 10, 15 years ago, I would go to the press maybe the second week of May, maybe the third week of May, and so it would hit the newsstands in June. But that's impossible nowadays with the transfer portal. In fact, these magazines have been hitting the shelves like June 1st and June 3rd and places like that. They had to go to the press before the transfer portal even closed. Well, the transfer portal closed May 15th. And then we had a good 3 weeks after that to capture where everybody was going. And we captured the majority of them. There's not a lot of guys out there that haven't moved. But our magazine does come out later than everyone else. It's just hitting Barnes & Nobles now, about a month after the other ones hit the stands. But the good news is all the players we have on the page are pretty much on the teams they're on, and there's nobody on the page that hit the transfer portal after the magazine went to the press because we captured it all. So it has made it a lot different. I know in years past, spring practice was over, and you pretty much had your rosters locked in. Now I'm telling each coach I talk to, hey, text me if you get anybody before June the 7th when we put the magazine to the press. And I was getting texts all the way up until that final day.
So what's your favorite part when it's finally complete?
Well, my favorite part of the magazine process is actually talking to the coaches. I talked to 125 of the 133 head coaches out there. We spent about an hour on each team going over it, and it really helps us with the depth that the teams have. It puts everybody in the right order, in the right spot, and also learn a little bit about each of the players. So I think my favorite part of the magazine process is just talking to the head coaches.
We are the flagship station for Old Dominion football here on 94.1 Priority Auto Sports Radio. And while the Monarchs didn't field a team in 2020, Ricky Ronnie orchestrated quite a turnaround in 2021 with that 5-game winning streak in the Myrtle Beach Bowl trip. Despite the wins over Virginia Tech and at Coastal Carolina as an underdog last year, saw them stumble down the stretch with 6 straight losses. So what's your view of this particular ODU team, Phil?
Well, you look at ODU, and last year they were number 20 on my experience chart. Now they're nearly at the bottom. They only have 4 starters back on offense. They only have 3 starters back on defense. There's question marks at the quarterback position. While they have a transfer from Fordham coming in, and Grant Wilson only has 13 career passes at Fordham. So a lot of inexperience at the quarterback position. Running back, same thing. They've got some talent there. They've got guys that can play, but there's inexperience there. I think the receivers are fine. They lose 2 star receivers, and Al Jennings and Zach Kuntz. But remember, both those guys missed a good portion of last year with injury. So I think they'll be fine at receiver. The offensive line is decent this year, but it is a very inexperienced team. And they're playing in by far the toughest division in the Sun Belt, which is, of course, the East. So I think overall, this to me looks like a rebuilding year, but I hesitate on that a little bit because the head coach, Ricky Ronnie, I mean, you go back and take a look at what you touched on, 2021. I didn't forecast Old Dominion get to a bowl in 2021. They didn't even play football, and the year before that they were 1-11. They had an inexperienced team, but Ricky Ronnie got them to a bowl game. So I'm a little nervous about the prediction, but this is an inexperienced Old Dominion team.
Yeah, you're right, Phil. They're a very live underdog, especially when they play Virginia Tech, and that Ricky Ronnie guy knows what he's doing. Let's jump to an in-state Sunbelt rival of ODU's in James Madison. Nice transition for the Dukes from the FCS to FBS as they went 8-3 a season ago. What's your look at them?
Yeah, basically they won their division last year because they beat Coastal Carolina in the season final 47-7. and had a great year. Unfortunately, now I haven't been updated. Is it still the same? They're not eligible for the playoffs this year?
That's what we understand. Yeah, at last check.
It seems a little bit on the ridiculous side, but they're rebuilding in the skill players. They lose their quarterback, they lose their top running back, and they lose 4 of the top 5 receivers from last year. I do like the replacements. I also like the job that Coach Kurt Cignetti is doing there. When you look at their schedule this season, I mean, they do pull 2 of the toughest teams out of the West in Troy and South Alabama. In fact, arguably the 2 top teams there. They have 13 starters back. Probably a slight underdog at Troy, a slight underdog at Marshall, slight underdog at Coastal Carolina. So the schedule's difficult, but as we saw last year, this team very capable. It's their second year in here. So I think they're a legitimate contender in the East once again this season.
Big game for JMU at UVA on September the 9th, and of course ODU opens at Virginia Tech on September 2nd. Speaking of those teams in Charlottesville and Blacksburg, we are in ACC country, so we go there. It's hard to believe Virginia Tech has gone through 3 consecutive losing seasons and went just 1-6 in the ACC a season ago. Phil, can Brent Pry get this turned around in year 2?
I think he will. This is going to be a much better team. I remember last year with Virginia Tech, they had 3 blown fourth-quarter leads. So had they held on and beaten ODU, NC State, and Georgia Tech, this team would have been had 6 wins last season. Offensively, that was a major question mark. I like the quarterback position this year much more than last year. I thought Grant Wells last year was serviceable. I think this year, if he holds on to the job, he'll be better. Kyron Jones coming in from Baylor, I think gives him some athleticism there. Offensively overall, they were poor last year. They're going to be slightly above average this year. Defensively, 7 starters are back. It's the second year of Brent Pry's system. Brought in a couple of transfers. I think they're going to be just solid on the defensive side. And I think they have an excellent shot at getting to a bowl game this year. So I think Virginia Tech fans are going to have a lot better season this year.
Not only was it difficult on the field year 1 for UVA under Tony Elliott, but also tragedy struck the program off the field. Brutal schedule out of the gate, too, with Tennessee in the opener in Nashville. Phil, give us your assessment of the Virginia Cavaliers.
Yeah, I think when you take a look at Virginia, they're probably 1 more year away from getting back to the Bulls, unlike Virginia Tech. Tough schedule. That James Madison game's not going to be easy in week 2. 1 week after playing Tennessee, they have to play Maryland on the road early on, so it's a brutal non-conference schedule, especially early on in the season. And when you look at their quarterback situation, I do like Tony Muskett coming over from Monmouth. I think if he wins the job, he's got 3 years of starting experience. They'll be better at running back with Pace, Hollins, and Jones. Overall, the offense can only be better last year. I'm still a little concerned about the offensive line. Remember last year, they were extremely inexperienced on the offensive line, and that really was the problem with the offense. Well, this year, they once again lose 4 starters off that offensive line. They're going to need that unit to come together quickly. Now, defense, I have no problems with. Defense, Virginia has a legitimate one. They've got 8 starters back from a defense that allowed just 358 yards per game and 24 points per game last year. Some star players like Chico Bendon at the bandit position, James Jackson, a middle linebacker. So the defense is probably going to have to carry this team again, but I think they're probably a year away from getting to a bowl game.
We're chatting with the football forecaster extraordinaire himself, the guru, Phil Steele. Go get his magazine. It's on newsstands now. Also, his website, philsteele.com. He'll tell you more in a little bit about what you get when you subscribe to Phil Steele Plus and everything he's got up there. Over 350 pages in this outstanding publication. It's been the most accurate magazine on the market the last 28 years. Give him a follow on Twitter, too, at PHILSTEELE042. It's Priority Auto Sports Radio 94.1 Afternoon Drive here. And Phil, we've got one more team from the state of Virginia for you to tackle, and that's the Liberty Flames. Sure, there was life for them last year after Malik Willis, as they posted an identical record of 8-5 from their 2021 campaign. Now the question is, can it be status quo or possibly even better under new head coach Jamie Chadwell as he fills the shoes of Hugh Freeze? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a heck of a coach to bring in, and Jamie Chadwell. And the thing about Liberty is they're a much more experienced team this year than they've with heading back with Caden Salter or Jonathan Bennett or Trey Lowe. I think they've got more experience at that quarterback position. That's going to help them out a little bit. You know, it was interesting talking to him, talking to Coach Chadwell this year. He feels that their secondary is actually better than the one that they had at Coastal Carolina. The big question mark on defense is the linebacking core. That's something that they need to help out in, maybe bring another transfer in there. Offensively, they're going to be decent. They're playing in the CUSA this year, which the CUSA is just a mixed bunch right now. There's a whole bunch of new players coming in, new teams, and it's going to be very interesting to watch it. I think they're a legitimate contender in CUSA, but I picked them fourth overall.
It is such a military area here in Tidewater, Phil, as you know. So with that in mind, Army and Navy, your feelings on the service academies, the midshipmen and the Black Knights?
Yeah, it's going to be a little different watching Army football this year because they're going to operate out of the shotgun. And it's something they haven't done. It's going to be very interesting, but I think they'll do just fine. And part of that's brought on by the fact that, remember last year they changed the cut blocking rules, so the wide receivers could no longer cut block. You could only cut block when you were inside the tackle box. And so that hurt Army a little bit. That's why they're changing the offense. I do think they will adapt to that offense. It's a veteran squad with 17 returning starters. Army only won 6 games last year, which after winning 9 each of the previous 2 years seemed like a step back, and it was. I think they have a good possibility of topping that 6 wins. I don't think it's going to be a 9 or 10-win season, but I am anxious to watch the new offense. And with Navy, this is a veteran squad coming back. And one thing about Brian Newberry, as opposed to Ken Niumatalolo, and by the way, Ken Niumatalolo did a phenomenal job with Navy throughout the years. But the one difference you're going to see this year is they did more hitting in the spring. So I think their defense is going to be better than what it's been in past years. Newberry's done a very good job with the defense. They've got 17 starters back. The big question mark is quarterback. Lavatai and Arline both missed the spring, which gave Horvath and Gleaton a lot of action. Who's going to emerge at that quarterback position? But this is going to be a dangerous Navy team. And, you look at their last 3 years, 3 straight losing years. I think this year they get back to a bowl game. So I see good things for Navy and Army. Both should improve on their records for last year.
That is why Phil Steele is the very best. He got Niumatalolo without tripping up. He's done that probably more times than I have. It took me about 7-8 years to get that down, Phil. One more here before we do another segment with you. Nationally, Georgia is trying to pull off the first three-peat since Minnesota in 1934-36. Didn't take a step back with 9 draft picks off the defense a season ago. Well, Stetson Bennett finally got his AARP card, and he's no longer the quarterback. So what says you about them Dogs and a schedule that, while the rugged SEC is the rugged SEC, it looks pretty manageable, that schedule?
Yeah, it's a great schedule for Georgia. They're going to be a double-digit favorite in every single game. Maybe the Tennessee game they might not be, but who knows? By that time they could be as well. And really the big question mark with them is the quarterback position. Now, they've got talent there. Carson Beck, number 6 rated quarterback coming out of high school. They got Brock Vandegrift, who's number 3 rated quarterback, Gunnar Stockton, number 2. So the talent's there. In fact, you could argue they've got more physical talent at the quarterback position than what they had. And every other unit besides quarterback ranks in my top 10 in the front of the magazine. So this is a loaded Georgia team. Lots going to depend on the quarterback. I think Carson Beck steps up, has a good year, and by the time they get to the big games, a game like at Tennessee, he'll have 10 games under their belt, and they'll be just fine. I am calling for Georgia to get that magical three-peat, and I got to tell you, though, I was not around for that 1934-36 Minnesota team, so I can't compare the two.
Nor was I. Good to know. Well, we've got more with the great Phil Steele. What about the Big Ten, a sleeper or two that may crack the playoff, a surprise outside the Power 5 league, an upset special, and Heisman talk? It's all coming your way with the football forecaster extraordinaire himself, Phil Steele. Get his magazine and make sure you log on to philsteele.com. It's Afternoon Drive on your sports connection throughout the Commonwealth and beyond with Matt Hatfield on Priority Auto Sports Radio 94.1.